I need to preface this by saying that I never claimed to be an artist. And as you can see by this picture here, it took me a number of attempts to even get this down because, boy, I can't draw. And also, I'm not a stop motion animator, nor am I a cinematographer. So it's sometimes small portions of my yellow legal pad here will be out of frame. Don't worry about it. Everything that is important is on the frame, and as long as you're listening along, you'll be fine. Also, you have the link to all of these slides in Google Classroom, so you can check that out. So what we're going to go over today is how a bill becomes a law. Normally, we do this as a class. You guys give me an idea for a law. We work through it. We do it all on the whiteboard. It's very fun. Obviously, circumstances at this point dictate otherwise. So today we'll take a little bit and we will go through the various steps to seeing a bill become a law. For just the sake of it's on the right side of the Capitol building and it made my flowchart work a little bit easier, we are going to pass a bill through the House of Representatives rather than the Senate. There is no difference for our purposes between the two. A bill, except for one dealing with taxes, can start in either house, the House of Representatives or the Senate, and then will be sent over midway through, as we'll see in a little bit. So there's no special reason for doing the House here other than, as I said, it's on the right side, and I like it there. So we are going to pass a bill through the House. I've been thinking about this, and all of the ones I come up with are boring because you guys come up with the fun, weird stuff, but I realized too late that I should have made this one of the bell ringers last week, but as I said, too late. So we are going to have the House outlaw the sale of vapes, full stop, in America, because weed is boring. We've talked about it enough, and everything else we would want to do deals with education. And as we have all known this year, because we've talked about it a lot, education is a state issue, so the feds really can't get involved. So let us begin with step one. As you guys are working through this, you know the assignment is to come up with your own flowchart. I'm fine with you guys sort of riffing off of this. Do it however you want. The only thing I ask is if you are a person doing this just as a list, you're not going to do the visual flowchart, you're just like listing stuff off, you need to give me a little more detail on what happens in each one. Because just writing propose without the kind of image of where it's happening doesn't really cut it. So I'm just saying, you know, give me a sentence for that as opposed to a word or two, and you should be golden. So play along as we go here, or listen through this and then go ahead and make your own flowchart afterwards, looking through and, you know, scrubbing back in the video to make sure you're clear on the concepts. All right, game time. Here we go. Step one is the proposal of the bill. So here is our representative in the House, and step one, he is going to, or she is going to propose a bill. In this case, saying, yo, vapes are bad. They cause decreased, you know, lung capacity. There's a bunch of CDC stuff out there. Also, the youths of America are vaping too much. So therefore, we should outlaw all vape sales inside the United States. Because vapes are sold across state lines, we have the Interstate Commerce Clause that says we can get involved with this. There is no constitutional issue at hand. We're all good here. That's the start of it. Where do these proposals come from? A couple different places. Sometimes you will see it come from a constituent or a bunch of constituents who say, hey, this is an issue in our state and we think it's an issue nationally. You should deal with it. Sometimes it'll be something that the representative has really believed in for a long time. The best representation of that would be Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan was a representative from Wisconsin. He was Speaker of the House for a while. And he was really, really into tax reduction stuff. And he made it sort of his quest in the House of Representatives to get tax cuts passed. So that was just something he believed in. Nobody had to tell him to do that. Paul Ryan got himself elected to the House of Representatives specifically to solve that issue. And then he solved it, sort of, and he left. He retired. So that is our first step. We are going to propose it, and then we are going to follow that arrow emerging from the House of Representatives across the street. Over here, and this is relatively and I say relatively because this is done on a yellow legal pad and not Google Maps. This is a relatively accurate look at where the House office building actually is. Most of the stuff that the House of Representatives does outside of speaking is not really done inside the Capitol building itself. Instead, it's done across the street at what is called the Sam Rayburn office building. That's what I've drawn here. It's called Mr. Sam's because Lyndon Johnson called him Mr. Sam. Sam Rayburn was one of the longest speakers of the House of Representatives. He was there basically like the end of the 1920s through the 1940s. He was a representative from Texas. They named a building after him. Everybody likes Sam Rayburn. But what is going to happen here is once that proposal makes it out of the House, so once we have proposed to do away with vaping, and the House is like, okay, we'll take it. It's in the box. It's in the hopper. We're going to go through it. They are going to send it to a committee. So that committee will be probably, let's think about, let's say it's commerce because it's probably not an agricultural product by the time it makes it into a vape pen. So we give it to the Commerce Committee. Commerce Committee is going to look into this and say, all right, how exactly are we going to do this? And what they will probably do then is send it within step 2. We've got a couple different levels here. They're going to send it to a subcommittee. So there will be members of the Commerce Committee that are on the subcommittee that deal specifically with, drugs or whatever. And they will be the ones that look at this and say, okay, this is how we think it should be dealt with. They're the ones that are going to do some research into what the bill says. They are the ones that will hold hearings. So they will do the research and then they'll call in experts. So you call in experts from the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. You probably have lobbyists and experts from Juul and whatever other vaping companies there are out there to make their case for why this shouldn't go forward. But the idea here is the members of the subcommittee are going to, at the end of this, have to give a report back to the whole committee saying, yes, this bill works. No, this bill doesn't work. So they do their research in the hearings. They hear from both sides. These are, remember, bipartisan committees led by whoever the majority party in the House at the time is. So right now, this would be a Democratic-led committee with a number of Republicans on it as well. Then what they will do is after these hearings, they will go into the markup stage. So we're almost at the door at this point. But markup is a big deal. Markup is where the committee says, okay, that original bill is missing some serious stuff. It does not deal with all of the issues. So we need to change it. We need to change our definition of vaping to include, X, Y, and Z thing here. And so they will mark up the bill. This is essentially editing an assignment like you guys have done for papers for years. It's the same thing. So they will write in, the margin, define as blah, 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 or they will strike a line out. And then they'll say, okay, this is what we like. So the subcommittee will have marked it up, and then they will take it to the committee as a whole. And the committee as a whole will listen to a brief report on, what they got out of the hearings, why the changes were made, and then that committee will read out the bill. And that committee has 2 options. So just as we're about to go out the door here, they go to step 2D. They can either report the bill or they can kill the bill. If they kill the bill, that means that the bill is not going to ever be voted on. It's not good enough to get out of committee. They're not going to waste the rest of the House of Representatives' time. Nope, we're done. And that's it. So theoretically, you could put a slash line right here and say, nope, that bill is just not happening. It was killed in committee. But it could also be reported to the floor, which will take us to step 3. Reporting it to the floor means that members of the committee are going to agree that, yes, this fits within, our Commerce Committee purview. It is a good bill. We like it. We think that it should be passed, so let's send it to the House floor. And that's what they'll do. So they will make a bunch more copies of that newly marked up bill. Sometimes these markups will be done all fancy like. Sometimes like the big tax cut a couple years ago that Paul Ryan was behind was literally being marked up until the last minute. And you can look at the original copy of it had just notes in the margins like everywhere. And that constitutes a markup, is whatever the committee sends out is the proposed bill, even if it's written in colored pens in the margins. That works. So For our purposes here, we are sending our bill back out of the Sam Rayburn office building and to the floor of the House of Representatives because it has been reported to the House. So, on to step 3. We are in the House here. It is time for debate and vote. Does everybody need to be there to debate this? Heck no. Most of the time, if you've ever watched C-SPAN, you'll notice that barely anybody's ever actually on the floor of the House of Representatives. They go there so their speeches can be entered in the congressional record and they can trot it out to their constituents and show them that they're working for them. But for the most part, the actual work, as we kind of established a little while ago, goes on across the street in the office building. There's a couple other ones, but the Sam Rayburn's the big one for the House. You need a quorum. A quorum just means that you need a majority of people there. So that would be 218 members of the House of Representatives need to be there to do business on a vote. The debate, though, requires virtually nobody to be there. So you go through, you have some people say, this is a great idea, it's great for our kids. Other people like, it'll be terrible for the vape industry, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. Because it's the House of Representatives, these are relatively short debates because of the time limits that we talked about when we did the legislative branch, or continuing to, I guess. So we will have a vote. A couple ways you can do this. You can do a vote by acclamation, which is what I have drawn here, where you just have people shout out aye or nay, and who's ever louder basically wins. If it's ever actually in question, though, you will go through what's called a roll call vote. And what happens there is they literally just read off everybody's name in alphabetical order. How do you vote? Aye, nay, or abstain. And abstentions are usually people that don't want to vote either way because it could be harmful to them. On most votes, that's not really an issue in the House of Representatives because there's enough people there. But sometimes you'll have to have the minority or majority whip people into shape and get them to vote for or against a bill so that it can pass or fail as the party wants. So that's pretty simple. Debate will be scheduled. It'll go for a certain amount of time, and then there is a vote at the end. Assuming it passes, and that's what we're doing here, because if we assume it fails, we miss out on the back half of this entire project. We move on to step 4. So now we have sent this over to the Senate. The Senate also has an office building. It's called the Richard Russell Office Building, I think. And that is over here. And they don't do as many hearings there just because there aren't as many senators. So what I did here is there's a committee hearing happening in one of the offices on the Senate side of the Capitol building. So they're all talking here. And they're basically going to repeat step 2 that the House did. So here, the Commerce Committee will again take a look at it. They will send it to a subcommittee. They will hold hearings. They may or may not mark up the bill. It's kind of up to them, which is why we have this asterisk right here. So they will conference on this. If they don't want to make any changes to the bill, then we would move on directly to step 5. But there's a possibility that we could also move on to our asterisk. So that's what's happening here. The asterisk is what is called a conference committee, and we talked about this a little while ago when we were talking about the different types of committees. A conference committee will say, okay, we members of the Senate would like to pass your bill, but when we sent it through markup, we made a number of changes. And when a bill gets passed, it needs to be verbatim, not a word, not a line, not a piece of punctuation out of line. It needs to be the exact same in both the House and in the Senate. So what a conference committee would do is they would have members of the House and the Senate come over here and hash out if they can agree on a bill. So normally the way this will work is changes would be made, and at that point the House would need to vote on that amended bill again, and then they'd send it back to the Senate, and then the Senate does what the House would do. So now we're in step 5. The conference committee is either done or it never needed to happen because the Senate committee agreed to the exact wording of the House bill, and they are going to vote on the bill. The Senate, we have our one thing here, whereas with the House, you had timed debate. Senate allows, as we established and you had on your quiz, unlimited debate. So you could have a filibuster here, not as much anymore, but it's still technically on the table. You could send it back and say, hey, we don't like the bill, House, fix it. That doesn't happen very often. More realistically, they will either kill the bill or they will vote on it and say, yes, we like this one too. So we've got another vote here in step 5. They have voted on the bill and they have decided to pass it as well. So now that bill has, to recap, been proposed in the House, gone through the entire committee situation over here with members of the specific committee to outlaw vaping in this case. It has been voted on and debated in the House. It's been sent to the Senate. The Senate debated on it. Maybe we had a conference committee come up with a slightly new bill. Maybe we didn't. But either way, it was put to a vote on the floor of the Senate, and the Senate passed it as well. We're in the home stretch now. Step 6 is we are going to send the bill to the president. Now, why is the White House sideways, you may ask? The White House is sideways here because it faces a different direction than the Capitol building, and I am nothing if not accurate in my drawings. Deal with it. So, what'll happen is at this point, the president will probably be aware of the bill already because it's not the most regular thing. We're not in the 1930s when FDR is taking an active hand in writing these bills. It's not the most regular thing for a bill to make it through both houses of Congress and get sent to the president at this point. So the president usually has a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. And if they don't, they have people working within the White House and on that presidential staff that will have briefed the president already on, okay, here's what's coming up. Here are the upsides to you passing it. Here maybe are some downsides. But, we want you to be able to think about this. So we are going to send that bill to the president. And the president has two options here. The president can either veto that bill or the president can pass that bill into law. And that takes us to our final step. If the president vetoes the bill, we follow step 7 back here. And Congress has to override the president's veto. And I hope you're all saying in your heads right now or silently mumbling to yourselves, right, they need a 2/3 majority in both houses to do that. So you need 2/3 of the Senate, so 67 members of the Senate to vote for the passage of that bill, as well as 2/3 of the House, which, oh boy, that's math I'm not confident doing. Probably around like 290 to 310-ish, maybe. Something like that. But you need 2/3 of the House to also override it. If both sides agree to it, then that veto is overridden and the bill becomes a law. If both sides do not agree to it, then the bill is dead and they can start again on something similar if they want, or they leave it there. Our other option is the bill is passed. The president says, yes, I like this bill. Good job, Congress. And that bill becomes a law. Congratulations, everybody. We've passed a law outlawing vaping. This guy's giving you a thumbs up. And he's holding up his law. So good for this guy over here. He's gone through a very long and arduous process. This is going to take months. And eventually, bing, we have a law at the end. So now we've got a law. Congress is done with this, and it is up to the President and the Department of Justice to enforce that law. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how a bill becomes a law as drawn by me on a piece of yellow legal paper. It only took me like 8 tries, and still, as you noticed, there were some arrows that popped up too soon or too late. It's terrifying hard work. Best of luck on this. If you have any questions on how exactly this flow works, anything like that, come by office hours, shoot me an email, whatever. And now that you're done, hopefully you have kind of followed along with this and have your own chart or visualization of how a bill becomes a law, and you are all ready to go. That's it for this week's, folks. So enjoy the low impact week. Go outside, take a walk, enjoy the weather, all that good stuff. And I will get at you next week when we get into you guys proposing your own bills. Woo woo! All right, have a good one, guys. Bye.